Welcome everybody to this webinar series focused on demystifying the audit process. This first webinar will take approximately 1 hour and will be focused on understanding the amfori audit process and the audit assurance program. And it targets our potential members, our current members, business partners, and other stakeholders that might be interested on the audit topic. This series is designed to help you understand the amfori audit process and how the amfori audit assurance program aims at ensuring transparency, quality, and integrity across all our monitoring activities within the amfori framework. Each webinar will cover important topics from understanding the amfori audit process, where we are today, to managing audit fatigue and ensuring audit integrity. So feel free to register now to secure your place for the following webinars. Before we start, some quick, clear housekeeping rules to ensure that everything runs smoother today. So we have a very nice number of participants already. Let me check, 155. And for this reason, we will have all the participants muted. However, feel free to share your questions and use the Q&A function for this to post them all. The team and myself and our guests today will be more than happy to answer to them all. The webinar will be recorded and the slides will be shared after this session. We will also ask for your opinion after this webinar, because your opinion is more important. It's really important for us to improve the quality of the webinars we are producing for you. So it's a pleasure to welcome you on today's webinar. My name is Sonia. I'm the auditing manager here at amfori, and I'm leading the audit assurance program. And today's agenda will be quite tight. We will start with a welcome note from our president, and then we'll go very shortly, briefly, through the audit process, and we'll try to explain how the audit assurance program works into this ensuring and improving the audit results. And then we will have a guest sharing the insights from an auditor and an auditing company perspective. That presentation will be followed by a Q&A session, and we will share at the end some conclusive remarks. Keep in mind that throughout the presentation, you are free to use the Q&A function to share your questions. And behind the scenes, you will have a team working to answer your questions. So the speakers today will be amfori President, Mrs. Linda Cromyoung, David Croft, Bureau Veritas Senior Manager, Supply Chain Solutions, and myself. Behind the scenes, you will have amfori's team, Sevan Siman and Bethany Dixon-Cave, amfori auditing experts. They will help to reply to our questions. And our colleague, Morgan Vansnick from Marketing and Communications team, that will help us to make this webinar run smoothly from a technical perspective. So welcome to our first speaker, amfori's President, Linda Cromyoung, that will welcome you to today's webinar.
Yeah, super. And thank you very much, Sonia. And Sonia already said it, it's great that we have so many participants here. And I think that shows that this is really an important topic that we are talking about. And the title of this webinar series is Demystifying Social Audit. So let me just, briefly touch on 3 things I want to demystify here. First of all, audits are due diligence. Well, that simply is not true. They're an important part of the diligence. They're one tool in the toolbox, but only can be used well if they're supplemented by other tools and interventions, such as capacity building for suppliers, such as remediation, such as continuous improvement, such as responsible purchasing practices, but also giving access to grievances. And I think, only then, say, audits add value. So important tool in the toolbox, but not due diligence. That is much more than that. I think the second myth is audits detect everything, and that's also not true. No, unfortunately, audits do not detect everything. They identify risk, they are a tool to gather data, they are a reliable and scalable solution. For example, human rights impact assessment is not scalable, and they heavily rely, say, on an assessment on the ground. That is, we will go into more detail there. That is based on triangulation. But it's a moment in time. And we also know that audits don't detect everything just because you're not there every moment of the day during a longer period, but also that some issues are sometimes less likely to be detected, such as violence against women. Audits do play a role. At amfori, we conduct around 40,000 audits a year, both environmental as social. But audits also give added value in the sense that because we collaborate with amfori in our collaborative programs, we also conduct 120,000 audits a year, not, and I think that's an important statement to make here, because we share resources, and therefore there's a lot of audits that are not needed because resources are being shared around our members. And I think the third myth really is about audit integrity is just the responsibility of one actor in the ecosystem. That's also not true. Also, audit integrity requires collaboration. Sonia already referred to our AAP program. And for those who are not aware about what AAP means in Netherlands, in Dutch, it means monkey, but it's a really important program. And also this program is really showing that we can't do it alone. Audit integrity is something that is relevant to address collaboratively, so with the auditing partners, with our members, with our business partners, and it is really an ongoing program here to make sure that integrity really stays at the high standards that it should remain. So with having said that, I think there is enough food for thought to really bring you into, say, the first webinar of this series. But hopefully I have demystified 3 things and just repeat them here. Audits are not due diligence. Audits do not detect everything, and audit integrity is really the responsibility of many in the ecosystem. And with having said that, I'm going to hand over back to Sonia here. And thanks for staying with us. And really, if you've got questions, there is a Q&A session in there. Ask those questions because those are important. And also will probably steer the conversation going forward. Over to you, Sonia. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. So following this very spot-on welcome speech, how does the amfori process work on this collaborative approach, on this due diligence journey? I would suggest that we start on aligning a bit on terminology, because amfori has its own particular story and its own particular wording, so better we start with a bit of alignment. So as you know, amfori, it's a company who advocates that trade should serve a purpose. And this purpose is delivering social and environmental and economic benefits for everyone. So our mission here is to facilitate sustainable business practices in a collaborative approach, where all the supply chain actors drive sustainable trade and together turn risks into opportunities. So we have already a long story, started in 1977, which it's the year I was born, by curiosity. And we have always been recognized by amfori BSCI audits. And we are, as we said, and we are very proud to say, a company that leverages decades of expertise and close collaboration with more than 204,000 members and auditing companies, producers and factories and other stakeholders all around the world. We then ensure a global footprint as you can see in the map, currently with offices in Brussels, Hong Kong, and very soon also in Mumbai, covering already industries in more than 50 countries that cover trade streams in more than 100 covers. And we still work to have a positive impact and to foster sustainable trade towards those supply chains. So in this sense, we help our members to follow their due diligence journey from showing commitment to responsible business conduct, and this is mainly where the audits are in, to understand the ESG legislation and let their voices be heard. So in this sense, as Linda said in her opening speech, audits are a tool used to assess the business partners' social and environmental performance, to identify risk, and they are not the end of the due diligence process. They are just an instrument that our members should use to better understand the risks in their supply chain and to prioritize their improvement actions and the improvement efforts, and to monitor the results of the continuous improvement actions and programs within their supply chains. So starting with some basic terminology to make sure that we all align on the wording. At amfori, we call the auditors monitoring persons. And those are persons that are really authorized by amfori, appointed and authorized by amfori to deliver qualified professional judgment on the social or environmental performance of a business partner of an amfori member. And the auditing companies or monitoring partners are the organizations where the auditors belong to, and they are also selected and contracted by amfori to provide professional monitoring to business partners, again, on social and environmental pillars. And at each monitoring partner, there is a person that is appointed to coordinate the amfori operations on their side, and to this person, we call them the scheme manager. So those are the, let's say, three main actors in the audit world for amfori. What are then the auditing activities at amfori? Well, those can be self-assessments, audits themselves, or continuous improvement actions. For BSCI, we can have full scope monitorings or follow-up monitorings, the ones that are shorter and focus on the areas where there were previous non-compliances. And the audits can be either semi-announced or unannounced. So since September last year, we have eliminated the possibility of having announced audits, and this was an action taken towards the intent of increasing integrity and credibility of the audit results. And then we have amfori BAPI monitorings that then again can be full scope or focused. We can decide which environmental performance areas we want to see audited, and they can be initial follow-up. The bigger difference here is that all BPI environmental audits are always fully announced. So the audit cycle at amfori is a 2-year period cycle and it's measured between 2 full monitoring activities. The monitoring validity for a business partner who obtains the highest overall rate in a full amfori monitoring, such as A or B, is 2 years after the first full audit. So if the business partner full scope audit ends with a C, D, or E, then the validity is only 12 months, and the business partner needs to conduct a follow-up audit, usually between 2 to 12 months from the initial one, to extend the validity until the end of the audit cycle. And this is to ensure that there is continuous improvement. The actions are taken towards the improvement of social and or environmental performance. So where does the audit assurance program steps in this process? The amfori audit assurance program, or as we like to call it within amfori, the monkey, is an amfori program that was designed to ensure the transparency, the quality, and the integrity across all the monitoring activities within amfori. It's not a new program. It's a very well-established one. It has been recently expanded. It started in BSCI audits and recently has been expanded into BPI audits also to cover also, and we are strengthening the program. So it is in the end a framework that ensures technical adherence to our requirements, ethical conduct among stakeholders. Those are the two key objectives of our program. So it ensures that our monitoring activities are reliable, credible, and transparent. It's a really essential program to maintain trust in integrity of our operations and to protect stakeholders' interests, such as yourselves. So, following to the structure of the program, we we are actively working to improve the communication regarding the audit assurance program and its underlying components. And the AAP is mainly focused on two different aspects of the assurance. So firstly, quality part, and then the integrity part. The quality, audit quality refers to the extent to which an audit is conducted in accordance to amfori's professional standards. And the program itself, should ensure the comprehensive monitoring of our monitoring partners and auditors. And so it should measure how well an audit is done in relation to our standards. And then with that, we are checking that the auditors are doing their job correctly. The audit quality program starts with the auditor qualification process, where we verify the experience and knowledge of an auditor candidate against a strict list of acceptance criteria. We then ensure that the auditor is properly trained to conduct both amfori BSCI and amfori BPI audits. And the third step is the auditors need to maintain their skills to keep on auditing. Then we have the audit integrity. It's the unwavering commitment to honesty from the auditors, from the monitoring partners, from all the involved parties, and it's focus on objectivity and transparency by all the parties involved in the audit process. So it's a kind of a more focused initiative that aims enhancing audit integrity by identifying, addressing, and mitigating the risks that can undermine the reliability and the credibility of the audit findings. So as said, the audit quality program is a well-established program already. We are just enhancing him on a daily basis with the support of our partners, the monitoring partners, the members, the business partners, so everyone in the amfori's environment. And to ensure that some credibility to the program and also to show some due diligence on our side, we are supported. Some of our quality activities are supported by an external audit partner. So as said, the audit quality program starts with the auditor qualification process. There can be different routes for this qualification process depending on if the auditor is already within the amfori environment or not, but there are always 3 steps, 3 moments for the qualification. first, the auditor needs to meet basic qualification requirements. Then the auditor needs to follow the strict auditor training. And the third step is the maintenance of proficiency or requalification, as you would like to call it. And this is a set of activities that should be put in place to ensure that the qualification of the auditor is maintained. For BSCI, the requalification process is to be ensured every 24 months, so every 2 years. For BPI, the process is more or less the same. So basic minimum qualification requirements, auditor training and maintenance of proficiency. The biggest difference here is that the maintenance of proficiency should be demonstrated every 12 months. So our quality program relies on on-site and off-site processes. The on-site processes are basically audits that we perform to our monitoring partners and to our auditors. And then we have the scheme management office audits. Those are intended to ensure that the overall monitoring partner management systems align with the expectations of amfori for the delivering of the auditing services. Then there are local office audits. There are more targeted management system audits focused on the local operations of each monitoring partner. And then more focused on the audit process itself and on the auditor behavior on site. We have witness audits. They are basically observation audits where amfori representative goes on site, follows an auditor to understand and to assess how they perform and they behave and how they follow the related amfori requirements. And in the end, we have the spot check visits. Those are usually the result of off-site processes. And they are meant to provide further insights on how the audit was planned, how the audit was executed, to check more on the integrity part. So for you to have an idea of the numbers, last year we performed 51 on-site activities, 15 scheme manager office audits, 13 local office audits, 13 witness audits, and 5 spot checks. And on top of that, we also organized 5 joint visits with members, where we were also trying to understand the accuracy of our audit results. Side by side with the on-site processes, we have then the off-site processes, and those are mainly linked with report reviews, with the follow-up of grievances and whistleblowing cases and of notifications we might receive from business partners, from external stakeholders, from members. We had several off-site activities ongoing last year, which resulted in 21 in-depth investigations. 3 of them developed collaboratively with other stakeholders, such as APSCA, for instance. Which of them we could close almost all. Let's say 17 of them are closed already. 1 is still ongoing, and it's a collaborative one, and 3 of them escalated to sanctions. So it's an effective program. We are seeing the results, and we are seeing the improvements after those investigations. The in-depth investigations, or more than 50% of the in-depth investigation cases, are linked with audit quality and integrity. And 1/3 of them started as or started from the results of our internal report reviews. So as of today, 2025, we have already 7 investigations ongoing, and this is also a result of the investment we are putting into the development of this team and on the increase of the quality activities within amfori. So after the in-depth investigations and the quality activities, both on-site or on-site, there can be sanctions, and there are several levels of sanctions depending on the outcomes of our investigations that can go from warning letters to full termination of auditors, monitoring partners. So for the integrity side, it has always been a focus for amfori, but internally we felt that it was not as structured, as well established, as well systematized as the audit program was. And in this sense, amfori started piloting it in 2018. And following the results of this previous pilot project, a new audit integrity project was designed to start December last year. And this new, let's say, audit integrity project has the main objective of enhancing the credibility and reliability of the audit process. So ensuring audit integrity is maintained and continuously improved. This audit integrity project has a lot of external participants in it because we need the involvement of different stakeholders to leverage, to share their expertise and their perspectives so that we ensure that the solutions we come out with are really effective ones. So again, the collaboration perspective is always present in our activities. This new integrity project has 4 distinct work packages, all with where we'll be discussing a lot of key challenges and common challenges within the industry. And it's it's done in a stakeholder-driven approach with the expectation of 4 working packages to be delivered. The 4 working packages are focused on uncontrolled third parties. So this is linked with the growing number of consultancies and agents in the market, business partner integrity, auditors and monitoring partners integrity, and also APSCA collaboration. So who is involved? At this moment, we have already 40 people involved in the project, from amfori members to APSCA, to our insurance partner, to auditors from auditing companies, and representatives from monitoring partners. More or less, we have 20 people for each work package, and 14 are involved in the core group, and there are 6 more that help us to handle the project itself. So this year we are enhancing also the collaboration with other parties. So we are still focusing our efforts in the regular calibration meetings, both global and regional, that we have with our monitoring partners. And then the collaboration of amfori with other external stakeholders like APSCA, working groups, NGOs, forums is being enhanced. We are also taking in-depth conversations with our monitoring partners to enhance our performance, to develop joint solutions for the common problems, and the dialogue with our business partners is continuously open. So I've taken a long time from this webinar already, and I think it's time for you to hear from our guest. So we are proud to introduce you our speaker today, Mr. David Croft. He's the Senior Manager, Supply Chain Solutions at Bureau Veritas. His background experience started 20-something years ago. He has a chemistry degree and has been in the manufacturing world for 7 years. He's working on the social compliance field for the last 23 years with various roles such as auditor, regional manager, technical manager, scheme manager. He has helped a lot of clients and schemes to adapt to improve their programs for social compliance and for environmental audits also. And he has been working with amfori since 2006 at Bureau Veritas since 2011. So he has conducted hundreds of audits in dozens of countries. So in this sense, he has a broad knowledge of this industry. So we would like him to share his insights now. So David, welcome today. My first question to you is, can you explain us on how the audit process, on how the amfori audit process contributes to building trust and accountability in supply chains?
Hi, Sonia. Thank you again for inviting me and to the amfori team. It's a privilege to be here. My experience with amfori goes back to, I'm guessing, about 2006, so almost 20 years working in various roles at audit firms in partnership with amfori. I think a scheme like amfori builds trust. As you saw from the graph, amfori has been going since 1977 in one of your earlier slides. In that time, amfori has kept up with what the market needs. So the BSCI audit is including all those topics that the members need to demonstrate compliance in their supply chain. And then the way that amfori works with monitoring partners such as Bureau Veritas makes sure that you get consistency across countries, across audit firms, and across auditors. So what I'd like to do is to present a few slides, starting off with who is Bureau Veritas, in case you've not seen us. We've been going since 1828, so we're getting on for 200 years old. We have a huge revenue, as you can see here, with over 6 billion euros. If we can move to the next slide. We try, like amfori, to build our client relationships based on trust. We have 3 golden absolutes: our own ethical behavior, the safety of our own employees, and then that financial control. So when we send out invoices, they should be on time, they should be accurate. We have a whole range of sustainable services across the various divisions of BV. So it's not just conducting social audits such as BSCI, environmental audits such as BEPI. We work with a lot of customers all over the world, and we're doing all sorts of different sustainability topics, from life cycle analysis to energy diagnosis. And quite often our clients like that because they can work with a trusted partner across the different processes. We are what's called a TIC industry: testing, inspection and certification. And you can see at the bottom where social audits fit in here. So it's a huge industry. There are multiple firms offering these services, and I think there's a dozen or so of us actually working as monitoring partners with amfori. We're seeing lots of changes happening. So I'm not going to go through these slides in any detail, but I think you will get copies of this after today. But we're seeing trends. And in the regulatory landscape, you can see the graph that's coming up in a second is showing that there are lots and lots of sustainability and CSR related legislations, and the rate of them coming into the market is increasing. So you can see towards the top, we have CSRD, CS-DDD, EUDR. There are lots of these services. And what we try to do at BV, often in partnership with organizations such as amfori, it's to make sure that we've got the services so our members and clients can actually meet these regulations and demonstrate that they're meeting them. So we're seeing some macro trends. There is a lot more pressure. There's lots of regulations, there's cost that there's so many pressure points for the factories, suppliers, brands, retailers, and schemes. There's always going to be change. We have to keep up. And this is why some of the points Sonia was mentioning earlier, you have to have that team of experts at amfori to make sure that programs such as BSCI and BEPI keep up to date. So we see three key challenges for our customers. Making sure that they can work with a monitoring firm that can cope with all their diverse needs, making sure that the work we do is actually aligned to what the market needs and what the regulations need, and then making sure that we can use all that data. And this is another great reason why amfori is so strong, because of the way that data flows in and then can be used by amfori itself, but also by its members. And again, we're proud to be a small part of that. We've been working with amfori as BV since it started. Personally, as I mentioned earlier, I've only been working with amfori since 2006 across 2 monitoring partners, and with Bureau Veritas since 2011. The programme, since I've been involved, has had multiple updates, and with BV, we participated in so many events over the years, and again, play our small part along with the other monitoring firms and the other partners to make this actually work. So what do we actually do? This links in quite nicely with the slides Sonia was showing earlier. We're helping in various work groups. We're going to the calibration meetings. We're having the office audits. These are all tied in centrally with amfori to make sure that their overall risk is managed, and you, the external stakeholders, members, suppliers, factories, can be clear what the amfori process actually is. The calibration meetings are a really good place for the monitoring firms like Bureau Veritas to actually get those updates, to make sure that our voice can be heard. And this is wonderful. amfori is full of experts. And one key benefit of having those experts is that they can listen to all the inputs, make their decisions, and then keep that flow going. Sonia mentioned that at the end of the summer last year, amfori moved to semi-announced audits. This has been good, I think, and one of the reasons this happened was because if the audit's announced, it's quite hard for a site to actually demonstrate that the way they're operating on the day of audit is the same throughout the year. I saw one of the questions that had come in that was saying, are there challenges for this? Yes, there are. If the site has got a window, as we call it, of 4 weeks or more, where they don't know exactly which day we're coming, it can be difficult to make sure that responsible people are there. But again, those systems do need to be working on all the days the site is operating. So generally, we haven't really had too much of a problem. The measure we have is how many times we turn up to semi-announced audits and we get rejected because the site is busy or too many people are not on site. And we didn't actually see very much of that at all since the change happened at the end of the summer. We thought it would be interesting to just talk about some of the issues that get raised. As most of you should know, there are various performance areas in the BSCI social audit. Child labour is a key one. It can happen everywhere. I live in Leicester in the United Kingdom, and Leicester is really quite famous in the UK for having some challenging working conditions, including fairly recently child labour working in garment factories. Sometimes that child labour could be historic. So a child may have actually started working when they were a child, but on the day of the audit, they are actually now an adult. Some countries need risk assessments. So if you have a young worker, maybe between the ages of 16 and 18, they shouldn't be doing night work. They shouldn't be doing any hazardous work. It's really good if a site can demonstrate they've checked that right to work so that children aren't there. And then maybe, depending on the country, a local law might say, if you have so many workers, you need to have a creche so that workers can bring young children in and be safely looked after. And if we move to the next slide, I've just given a few illustrations of issues related to wages. The most common one is minimum wage. This is a given. Most countries around the world will have a minimum wage. Some of those can be quite complicated because it might depend on the age of the worker and also what job they're doing. It's a very common finding that we have where some or all of the national insurance payments aren't made. So, for example, in China, there are 5 common types, and often for migrant workers coming from a different area, they're not paying all of those national insurance types. We do see from time to time, sites might bring in an external party to try and get through the audit. Sometimes they go down the path where they try and falsify something. So at the audit, we have processes to find this. We do something called triangulation, which is not just looking at records, it's talking to workers, looking at production records. So quite often we will actually find that if a site's trying to falsify, and we strongly recommend don't go down that route. Fire safety is very important. Over the years, there have been some very unfortunate fires that have affected hundreds of lives. Either people have passed away or they've been seriously injured with life-threatening changes happening to them. So it's really important that sites will have the relevant fire hoses or fire extinguishers to meet the local law. But it's not just having them. Do they work? Are they the right type? Are they in the right place? Are they accessible? Have the relevant people been trained to actually work them? Normally, countries will have a local law saying you should be practicing to evacuate. So there are normally dozens of different sorts of findings that we can have in each of the performance areas. And throughout the audit, the auditor is going to make them super clear, and they'll let the site know if there is a relevant law or if it's just against that code of conduct coming from amfori. So after the audit, the site will have something called a corrective action plan, and they can then develop it. So for each issue, they can create a root cause analysis. And when they found that root cause analysis, they can actually start then to resolve that issue. And at the next audit, they can then demonstrate it. So I thought I'd give a super simple example of a 5 whys analysis. This could be me, maybe. So you're late to the office. So what we're going to do here is simulate that 4-year-old child that says, why? And until they stop saying why. So often I think this 5 whys analysis, which is a very common tool for root cause analysis, was probably developed by a 4-year-old. So why are you late to the office? Well, because you left home late. Well, why did you leave home late? Well, I actually overslept. I woke up too late. And why was that? Well, the alarm clock didn't go off. And why didn't you get woken up by that alarm clock? Well, I was so sleepy I couldn't hear it ringing. And why were you so sleepy? Well, I didn't go to bed till 2 o'clock. And why couldn't you sleep until 2 o'clock? Because I had too much coffee. So you finally got to that final answer using this technique. There are other tools for 5 whys analysis, but this is probably the most common one. Here, I've got an example that's got 2 root causes, and this may apply to 1 or more sites. Excessive overtime is a common non-compliance around the world. So you can ask the question, why have we got too many working hours, excessive working hours, maybe too many consecutive working days for the workers? Well, it's because the site is very busy, whether it's a farm or a factory. We can do these BSCI audits at many different types of site. Well, we're so busy because there's so many orders coming in. Well, why don't you say no to some of them? Well, we can't say no to them because sometimes they're sporadic. We have very busy periods, and then we have periods that are not quite so busy. And then you say, well, why is that? Well, some of our clients now aren't giving us forecasts. They're ordering in smaller quantities and shorter lead times. So you've got one root cause already. There's better forecasting can happen. And then why are you saying that it's too busy? Because maybe the factory isn't big enough or there aren't enough workers. And then why is that? Well, maybe the infrastructure of the building isn't big enough, or you don't have enough machines and you don't have quite enough work to put in a second shift. So then you've realized then you've got 2 outputs from this. You have excessive overtime because you haven't got good forecasting in place. So suddenly then you're making your workers work a little bit late. And then the second thing is you don't have that capacity. Because you haven't got the forecasts, you haven't got the right number of machines or the right number of workers. And then you can actually start to work on fixing those issues. This can be quite difficult. Something that we've done over the last year at PV is we've started to write a series of online training courses, which are available to anybody. The first one is what we call CSR 101, which is a basic introduction to any sort of social audit. What are the topics? What happens on the day? It only takes about an hour, but if you're very new to social audits, this can be a very easy way to access what actually is a social audit. We've got a whole load of other courses either created or in the works at the moment, and these are all based on requests coming from supply chain and from our customers. So one that we released just a couple of months ago was, what do you do maybe the week before your semi-announced window opens? Well, this training again is about an hour or two, and it goes through a whole processes of hints and tips that myself and other colleagues at BV have picked up over the years, where we've seen sites perform well at audits. So you don't suddenly realize that you haven't got that document ready and it turns into a finding. We've got other courses. What I'm working on with colleagues at the moment is how to create that management system. So maybe you have multiple customers with different codes of conduct. How do you actually put that management system in place so that you can then make sure that that facility is going to be prepared for the audit that is happening? For example, that BSCI audit. And they're all on our online platform, very, very easy to access.
Okay, a lot of questions coming in from our participants. Let me start with an easy one. So there's a question about training. So how can what trainings are there available for the auditors? How do we ensure that the auditors are well trained? So how do you do it at BV? You're muted, Dave.
For our auditors, first of all, they have to meet something called APSCA, the Association of Professional Social Compliance Auditors. So APSCA is our professional body. amfori requires that all of the monitoring partners are members of APSCA, and we are founder members. All of the auditors then have to progress through 3 levels of exams. So to start off with, they can be an associate, and then when they finish through the exams, they can be what we call a CSCA, or a Certified Social Compliance Auditor. And this is training not provided by APSCA. They provide the framework, they provide the exams, but at the audit firms, we actually have our own internal trainings, and sometimes we have external trainings as well. So we can have various different routes depending on how the auditor is starting at BV. Maybe they're fully qualified already. Maybe they've just got a few years experience working in a factory in a quality role or HR role, for example. So we look at where they're coming from, and then we tailor the training to them. And we have core training at BV, and sometimes we use external trainings as well. To qualify them then for amfori, as you mentioned earlier in your slide, Sonia, we have to put them through a 5-day course provided by amfori that qualifies them. We have continued professional development for all of our auditors based on complaints coming in, errors we find in reports, industry trends, updates in programs. And we have a whole process of creating these and then getting them approved by APSCA. And then amfori themselves give us trainings. So this can be at the calibration meetings, or sometimes we have focus trainings. And then, as Sonia mentioned earlier, there is a process where every auditor has to maintain their qualification for amfori. So there's a lot of work going in the background that then also includes the audit firms doing our own internal exams from time to time, our own internal calibration meetings where at a country level we give specific trainings to auditors, and then we have to witness them at least once a year.
This is linked with a very good question that popped up in the chat. Is we see in the real world that sometimes auditors bring in their own perspective, their own personal experience into the audit, and this is also shown in the audit report. So in this sense, how can we ensure consistency and the quality in the reports in a way that different auditors will find the same findings, or will write them in the same understandable way for the members, for the business?
I think this question is the backdrop of my career over the last few decades. We have to be impartial. So we're regularly making sure that those auditors have no conflict of interest. The auditors are not judge and jury. They are not there to go, tut, tut, you're doing really badly. They are there to help sites demonstrate that they are meeting the requirements of amfori BSCI or amfori BEPI. Their own personal judgment has no place in these audits. We, like the other monitoring firms, have a complaints process. So if anybody feels that an auditor is not auditing as per the methodology, or is not being impartial, or is not being professional, and again, we give them lots of trainings on ethics, impartiality, professionalism. But if you feel they're not acting up to what you feel that we are expecting our auditors to be at Bureau Veritas, we have various complaint mechanisms. So at each audit, we make sure the site knows how to contact us for any complaints. And you can also complain directly to amfori or directly to APSCA, and we provide all those details during the scheduling stage. So yeah, don't be quiet and accept it. An auditor needs to be impartial, and they need to follow the methodology. And they need to be polite and professional at all times.
My question now, Linda started this webinar by saying that we all need to acknowledge that audits are not perfect. Audits are a picture of what we see on the day, but still there are some issues we need to tackle that are linked with the credibility and integrity topics within the auditing world. And those cannot be without a very strong collaborative approach, this is certain. But from a monitoring firm perspective, which issues you see as more persistent in the auditing industry that are affecting this credibility and the quality of the audits, and how do you at BV manage those?
I'll underline what Linda was saying at the start. Audits aren't on their own the only piece of that jigsaw puzzle. I remember 15 years ago, I went to an amfori conference in Brussels, and there was an amazing keynote speaker, Professor John Ruggie, and he gave a little story that said in a particular country, a farmer would take the pig to market and they would weigh the pig. And then depending on how much it weighed, the farmer would get more money. And the farmer used to weigh that pig every single day. And the moral of that was that it doesn't matter how many times you weigh the pig, it's not going to weigh anymore. It's just one thing you've got to do to get that best price. And the same thing is true with audits. Doing audit isn't good enough on its own. It's there to measure, and then people can actually act on it. The challenge we have is sometimes an audit is a gate that needs to be opened to get purchase orders. So sometimes the site will take shortcuts. So one big challenge we've got, and we're regularly doing projects on this within BV as well as with partners such as APSCA and amfori, that the challenge is if the site brings in an external consultant who tries to bypass the system by copying and pasting in a fake system that doesn't really apply at the site, because then typically we do find this. And then the challenge is, does the site then try and bribe our auditors, or do they try with falsified records to trick the auditors? This for me is one of the challenges. The other is time management. The sites need to be prepared, and the auditor also needs to be prepared. If, for example, there are several issues to find, we still only have a certain amount of day to finish the audit. So the time management skill of the auditor is absolutely crucial.
Thanks, David. Just a final question, because we are almost in the end of the time. Why should people use BV? Why should people use amfori in their due diligence processes and roads?
Okay, well, let's start off with amfori. Again, I've invested a lot of my career with amfori over the years. I think you need to be thinking about trusting amfori, number one, because of the sheer footprint of these audits. Somebody from amfori, please jump in, but I believe the annual number of BSCI audits is over 50,000 a year. It's
close to 40,000, David. Yeah.
Oh, I was exaggerating. Apologies then, but that's still a phenomenal amount of audits. So if you're thinking about making efficiencies, then why would you do your own audits? Why would you spend all that time assembling a team and creating your own program when one already exists and is trusted by the market? You know that there's that team of experts, like those on the call at the moment from amfori, that are making sure they have that system that works. And then with the overlap of the different supply chains, you're not having something called audit fatigue, which is the sites having 20 or 30 different social audits for different brands and retailers every year, because then they're focusing on the audits and not the improvements. And then the other huge benefit from amfori is the ability to measure. So if any brands or retailers or suppliers are now having to start working on things like CSRD or CSDDD, suddenly you've got that huge amount of data that's coming in from amfori that you can trust because it's based on real activities with objective data sitting behind it.
Okay, David, thank you so much for your time today. We have a
Well,
lot
I
more.
didn't mention BV, sorry.
Didn't.
BV in a similar fashion, we have a really solid backbone of integrity, so people can trust what we're doing. Again, trust is one of those key points that we make across all of our services at BV. We have a large footprint, so we're typically with our clients and schemes that we work with number 1 or number 2 in terms of volume, and this can help with efficiencies and costs. And then we have thought leaders across the business. So we have teams all over the world that are there to actually support schemes and clients to make sure that the audit process is robust.
Okay, thank you so much. We are really getting closer to the slot we reserved for this webinar. There are a lot more questions coming in the Q&A session. Just keep on sending them. We will work collaboratively to prepare something and send it and share with you with all the registrants after this webinar. And so I would like to hand over to Linda again for some final closing remarks before the end of this webinar.
Yeah, and let me start with thanking David for your intervention and sharing, say, the BV perspective, but also Sonia about explaining what we do at amfori with regards to social compliance audit and also, of course, environmental audit. And I think, let me summarize that, say, I started off with saying, well, audit is not due diligence, that's true. Audit is one tool in the toolbox. But it's an important tool in the toolbox. And it's also not just an audit only. It is really something that requires investment in people with regards to making sure they've got the right level of competency, that they train properly, but also there is an education panel moving forward, but also there's integrity systems around it that also support people as well as, say, the entire environment they're working in. But it also requires ongoing investment in the system. And I think that's also what Sonia clearly outlined. It's just not a one-off. We learn by doing. We are making our systems more and more robust by making sure that we have the right level of intervention. And also those interventions, it's not something we do alone. We do that with many of the actors within the ecosystem, making sure that, say, the social audit gets more robust, that it identifies things better, that if there are issues of abuse or non-ethical behavior with regards to social compliance audit, that those are also being identified and being addressed. So it's the entire ecosystem here that is really absolutely relevant. I also saw a lot of questions coming in with regards to APSCA, and maybe that's not for now, but maybe at some point in time, we might need to spend, say, maybe a specific webinar on APSCA only. We need to clarify what the role of APSCA is and how it interacts, because I think there's also a few things we need to demystify here too with regards to the role of APSCA. And David, you explained it, I would say, brilliantly in a few sentences. It's the organization that stands for the profession. And I want to echo here that being a social compliance auditor is a profession, and people should be really proud about it because we expect a lot for them. They are the ones on the ground that execute based on the systems around it, based on, say, agreed code of conduct and principles. And they have to do that every day in sometimes challenging environments. And they do that with pride. And they are not only knowledgeable about what we expect from an amfori BSCI perspective, or what BV as a monitoring partner expect from, say, what's a good social order, what APSCA expect, but they also need to be able to interact with many people of many different levels and also understand, say, the specifics, say, of the local environment. So being a social compliance auditor is a profession, and people really should be proud of about that one. Let me also make one concluding remark here about the jigsaw puzzle and come back to how David, say, expressed it. The jigsaw puzzle is getting bigger. Let's put it in those words, where maybe in the past we started off with 10 pieces, we now already have more pieces of the puzzle because we see that we're learning by doing and we need to add additional elements. not only to make sure that the audits are trusted and credible, but also to really make sure that the audits address and look into the facts that matter. And we see that legislation is a driving force here. Professor John Ruggie, late Professor John Ruggie was mentioned here, he played a crucial role here too, but he also acknowledged that audits have a function and a role to perform. And in, say, making the system around social compliance audits more robust, adding more pieces to the puzzle, I think that is where we all should stand for. We can't do that alone. We do that with all of you. So again, collaboration here is really key, really instrumental. So thank you for being here with us. And thank you for the team in the back office who was really trying to answer many questions via the chat and via the Q&A. And they will also follow up if and where needed and where we can follow up, because if questions have been asked anonymously, then life is a bit more difficult here. So thanks again for being with us. Hope to see you back again in the next webinar on the series. Sonja, back to you.
Thank you so much, Linda, for your closing remarks. Thanks again, David, for being here today. Thank you for the team to the team behind the scenes. You did an incredible job. And to you, all the participants here today, thank you for listening to us. Thank you for raising your questions. As we said before, we will try to answer all the possible questions afterwards. Both the recording and the slides will be shared with you. And please do not forget to complete the survey that will be sent to you, because this is a key tool to understand if we are addressing the right topics, the topics that you are expecting us to cover, and also to register in the next webinar where we will be deep diving on audit quality and integrity, and also in the responsibility towards audits. Thank you so much. Have a nice day and a nice weekend ahead. Thank you.